I'm starting to progress in the soldering here, and what I want to do is get a little bit of it started so that you can see the process a little bit slower. Keep my iron cleaned off the tip. I'm using a inland maroon and white. I love these irons. Good irons, real good workhorse. I'm using Canfield Coppermate flux. I'm going to flux the window. I've started it so I can get a little bit into the process, because I've only got 10 minutes maximum to utilize. I use the bevel in here to keep things straight, 1, 2, 3 pieces in line. I'll move the bevel over here to keep my pieces nice border. And you notice I cut all my glass around the center. Pretty much just a one take if I want to call that done. Sometimes it requires an up and down like a sewing machine kind of a tap. Sometimes side to side. Sometimes your foil doesn't want to be soldered at that point. You never know. There's all kinds of things going on. Especially when flux is being burnt off at the surface. There's a little war going on practically with this solder. It's very hot at the surface. There's a chemical reaction going on with the flux. So you're going to create contaminants due to this heat of this iron. So sometimes your solder just ain't going to flow. It's not you. Don't be hard on yourself. Trying to turn my board as I go because I know I'm the only person doing all these videos. So I don't have the option of having somebody zeroing in, so to speak, focusing. I kind of like working from the left to the right. I'm right-handed. So I always like taking it from my left to my right. It's just one of those little quirks that I have. Get comfortable, whatever you are, get comfortable with that method and train yourself that way. Make it part of your pattern, your process. It's all about confidence anyway. That's pretty much the whole name of the game. Once you got some flying hours under your belt, you'll be confident too. This solder is not spitting whatsoever. I don't know if you're noticing that, but there is no little pops that typically flux does. But this is the best flux, I believe. It's Canfield Coppermate flux. You can go to their website. This is 60/40 solder, and I can pretty much solder get a good bead with any solder if it isn't really contaminated. Solder can get contaminated. It can get old. It's going to oxidize. It's a metal. It's part tin, part lead. It's going to oxidize. So try to keep your solder fresh, where it ain't in some moldy, mildewy kind of an environment, so that it doesn't oxidize on you. Keep it in a dry place, in other words. I pretty much like to, once I'm in and out of an area, I like to call it done, unless I see something that's really obvious. And what I saw obvious there is that my solder looked a little bit flat. I like to keep it piled up high so it's got a nice rounded ridge look. Otherwise it looks anemic to me, and I don't like that look. This is an intersection right here, just like on a street. I don't like seeing big solder globs in the middle of an intersection that typically you might see in somebody's work. Something I look for. I'm going to use my bevel here, tuck it in so I can tack solder some of these areas. I'm going to tack solder this. That way my glass doesn't move on me. Sometimes you look up and oh my gosh, you created a gap. So tack soldering will hold everything still while it gives you time to get to it eventually. If you got an area that's getting too hot, you've been messing around, putzing around, get out of the area. In other words, if I'm not getting cooperation, I'm going to go over here. Let that chill out. Let it cool down. And you cool down too, by the way. When you get nervous and you start making mistakes, and it can end up sounding like the worst nightmares, that little chink, that means you popped your glass. Now you're in for your repair job. And that's not what we want here. We want to have a good experience of soldering and the whole cooperation of making a window so that you want to come back and make another one. Hopefully you've been following this little series, this 18-inch panel. I'm going to make it again, and I'm going to make it in blue, I think, blue French crackle with white. That should look really cool. I think it'll look elegant. Here comes a pixie bob. I raise these guys. They're always coming over to see me. Pixie bobs are half bobcat and half domestic cat. See, he has no tail. That's my timer. I want to be aware of the length of my video. So right there I've got a little bit of a solder glob going on in this intersection. I don't want to keep that there. Dragging a little bit of my solder out of the way. Well, sometimes you got to go back again. Just a little bit of fight there, not much. I'm not using a rheostat. I'm using a iron full bore plugged in. The iron cannot keep up with me. I can go faster than the iron can heat up. Typically, I'm using 2 irons with no rheostat because the irons, it's all they can do to keep up with me. I'm sure, I've tried all the irons, and I'm sure a hexagonal, I think they're called hexagonals, something like that. Very expensive iron. They can run $150, and I hear they are the best. Well, I'm happy with this $25 inland. And you might be too. So, got to keep in mind my video length there. I think you get the idea. I'm going to solder this all the way around, and then we're going to work on the background. See you on the next video.